And I'm hoping, as Hashem Yisbarach, that we're mechaven to the emes, that we say the truth over here. Just to begin, I want to ask you guys a question. We all want Mashiach to come, obviously. Right? We're waiting for Mashiach to come. What exactly is Mashiach going to do? What's his job? What is his tafkid, Mashiach? So it's a little bit rhetorical.
Which one?
What?
You want to cite as the Rambam?
The what?
You know, citation from the Rambam, the building the third temple, and all.
Okay, so the Rambam says three things.
Yeah,
right?
three things.
World peace.
Okay, what I want to say to you is a different mahalach about what he's supposed to be doing.
Which one?
Which Mashiach?
Yeah.
And David, presumably.
Mashiach ben Yosef is another discussion. Okay, whether he's a person or an idea, we're not even going to talk about. We're not going to go there. But Mashiach ben David, or the Mashiach, is definitely, he's coming very, very soon, as Hashem Yisbarach. And when he comes, basically, he is going to do a mahalach. What he's going to do is, to every single person in this room, every single Jew in Berlin, every single Jew across the planet, and then eventually every non-Jew, he's going to show us what we're supposed to be doing here in this world. He's going to bring out our koach and show us what our tafkid is, and show us how we can feel fulfilled. And the mashal that I always give, it's a classic mashal that has its roots in the Zohar. This mashal is the mashal of music. So imagine that I could look at each one of you and look not just at you, but inside of you. I could really understand you well, and I could tell you, you are a violinist. Okay, tell us what you are. And the Helig Rav over here probably plays the drums, if I'm reading you correctly. Each one of you has your instrument. Now, it could be that you don't know that you have an instrument that connects to your neshama, an instrument that is really, truly yours. And you need someone very big to tell you, this is the instrument that's going to give you your maximum happiness. This is the one that you have to play. But that would only be step number one. Because step number two is to show you not just what your instrument is, but how to play it, how to bring it out to its fullest potential. Step number three is when you play in an orchestra, you don't play on your own, you play with other violinists. So each one has to learn how to play with the next person in harmony with your other co-violinists. So you're working as a team. It could be that some of you have to do a little this way. And finally, the violinist has to play with the drums. And the drums have to play with the clarinet and with the piano, and every single one has to play their instrument. And if I, as Melech Mashiach, can do this with every person on the planet, at some point, you're going to hear also the music of the animals, the Pirkei Shira, and you hear the music of the celestial bodies. And by the time the concert is ended, so Mashiach is not really necessary, because the name of that concert is called Hashem Echad. That is what it means, Hashem Echad. Echad means the unity of Hashem is where every single person is doing exactly what he's supposed to be doing. So that's the Mahalach of Mashiach. By the way, that's what we say in davening. Hashiva Shefteni K'Varishana V'Yotzeni K'Vatchila. This is the first of the many steps that Mashiach is going to need in partnership with Mashiach. And then we say the words V'Chasem Imenu Yagain V'Anocha. V'Chasem Yagain and V'Anocha, depends how you translate it. But one of the ways to translate it, Rav ben Rambam says that Yagain is the pain that we feel, which has a reason, and Anocha is just when we just cracks, because we're just not happy, which is very common today. Everyone has anxiety. If I work with Americans. If you don't have anxiety, there's something wrong with you. So everyone has to have it. I'm sure it's not so much better over here in Berlin. I just came now, I spent 5 hours coming from Prague, and in my little train booth, there were educators from Holland. I said, do you guys have to deal with the same problems that we do in America? And he said, yeah. It's a crazy thing. He says, our class is divided into two halves. Those that actually are in therapy and those that think they don't need therapy. So they told me. So the bottom line is that we have a klal that says the closer you get to Mashiach, the darker the night gets. I'm not going to go into it because it's going to be a different class. But the darkest part of the night is the very, very end of the night. If you want another way of saying it, if Mashiach is going to be an explosion of emes that comes from the ground, so the seed has to rot until there's nothing there, till the world is kuli sheker. And for the purposes of our class, it means that before Mashiach comes, the sense of who I am, the sense of self disappears. We don't know who we are. Everyone has a loss of who they are. What I'm saying now is the way Menachem Nissel says it. You don't have to agree with what I'm saying, because I myself am not saying it lav dafka. But I'm saying, once upon a time, at least when I was growing up, you still had a thing called a parent and a child. So, and say in the 60s, it started to fall apart. But in the 50s, you had a thing. It was the parents, and you listened to the parents, and there was the children, and there was a thing called a family structure. There was a thing called a king and a people. I'm from England, so this is very sensitive. I don't get into trouble, but Her Majesty had some little shemets of what Malchus once was. There was a Malka and a nation that wouldn't dream of saying a bad thing about her, even if you disagreed. But you had Kavod Malchus. You had a little sense of Kavod Malchus. And finally, which is obviously the point I'm trying to get to, there was a thing called male, and there was a thing called female. It was always like that. And people felt comfortable discovering their identity, discovering who they are, and discovering what they're supposed to be all about. So let me summarize what I said till now. This is just a word of Hakdama, is that there's such a thing called joy and pleasure of finding out what is your makom. I'm a child, this is my father, this is my teacher, this is my king, this is my wife, everyone knows who they are. I'm supposed to bring this out in this world, you're supposed to bring that out in this world. We work together in harmony. I work with my group, I work with Klal Yisrael has Shvatim, the Shvatim have Mishpachos, and everyone feels a sense of identity and a sense of self-worth and a sense of this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And that we achieved once at Har Sinai, Ki ish echad b'leiv echad. We, so to speak, recreated what's called Adam Arishon Ufnei Achet, that Adam that was per Ki ish echad b'leiv echad, and Mashiach is going to bring back that Ki ish echad b'leiv echad the way it's supposed to be. Now, I want to show you a pasuk in the Torah. This is the pasuk of Lei Sulmak. Before I do that, I just want to say, like in a cigarette pack, there's a thing called a government health warning. Okay? So I just want to say, everything I'm saying to you now is purely in the world of theory, in the world of what's called lumdas, the idea, a world of ideas. What the Torah wants us to understand. I work in the real world. In the real world, the approach is different. Not just for pragmatic meetings, because the people are different. And very often, what I'm going to be saying now, if I said it to them, would be extremely insensitive, and I would never do it. I would never say anything insensitive to a person for several reasons. First of all, like we mentioned, the world is changing, so the idea of self-sense of who we are is very, very quickly being lost. Secondly, it's just interesting. Yesterday, I was at Prague Castle with a chevra from Brooklyn, and they wanted to try and make the guards laugh. And they asked me, Rabbinerseminar, what do you think? Right? I said, okay. And I didn't say Chil Hashem. I said what I heard from Rabbi Asher Weiss when I was there in Prague Castle a year ago. He said, Chil Hashem is not the point. These people are Tzuras Ha'adam. These are real people. They're not just things. They're not just a game. These are real people with families and kids and a sense of self-worth. And I happen to have students who I know who are going through this whole thing of identity crisis and gender transitioning, all kinds of things. And what I do with them is, number one, I give them love. Number two, I give them respect as much as I can. And the third thing, which is the hardest for me, but the most important, is I don't judge. I would say I work on myself very hard. I don't judge. I don't know where you're coming from. I don't know your story. I don't know what you've gone through. And therefore, I try very hard to do all the things. That's the world of practice. But you and I, we're here in a Beis HaMedrash, have to understand what's the way of seeing, how do you understand these things. So before we look at the Gemara, I want to show you a pasuk in the Torah. So the pasuk in the Torah you all know, which is Parshas Kiseitze, Perek HaBeis, pasuk Hey. I should have printed it out for you as well, but the pasuk got three parts. Number one, Leitiyeh Kli Gever Al Isha, right? Leitiyeh Kli Gever Al Isha. There shouldn't be a vessel of a man on a woman. Second part is Le'yilbash Gever Silbas Isha. So you notice that there's a transition from Kli to Levush, and there it says specifically Simlas Isha. By the way, the Netziv says a simla is something mechubad. So when Klal Yisrael left Egypt, they wanted kesezov, it's smalais, right? Simla means a clothing that elevates you, that makes you look chashuv. What's the last part of the pasuk? Ki toyevas Hashem, which means kirsatem elikecha kol eisa ela. Ki toyevas Hashem elikecha kol eisa ela. So the idea of teva we're going to translate in a moment. But the To'eva defines what's the problem with number one, Lesia Kli Kever al Isha, number two, La Yulbash Kev Simlas Isha. So the Targum says over here, what's the translation of To'eva? He says something different in other parts of the Torah, but here he uses the words merchak, right? To'eva means you create a distance. So I want to say a Menachem Nissel idea. What I'm saying now is I never saw it anywhere. Which is another way of saying you don't have to agree. It's the way I see the world, the way this works for me. What does it mean, merchak? To'eva is a merchak. So I understand that Kadosh Baruch Hu did not create clones. He created things called a spectrum. Let's focus specifically on male and female. What that means is as follows. Male was always a spectrum, and female was always a spectrum. So when I grew up in London in the 60s and 70s, before everything fell apart, I think the 60s, by the way, was the decade, because I mentioned beforehand, male and female. So the 60s is when the hippie movement came out. 60s is when education became co-ed. It used to be boys' schools and girls, then became co-ed. The 60s is also when parents and children disappeared. So I don't know if you remember Dr. Spock? It was the book that changed the 60s. Basically says that children should call their parents by their first name. So he, with his genius, it was the greatest selling parenting book, told the whole generation, Matt, your parents and you are equals. That's what he said. And then, what was the third one? A king and a people. So everyone thinks that, the Malchus was destroyed by Biden and Trump. or Obama, already started appearing in public in the swimming trunks. But really in the 60s, it was a zazua. Everyone was shocked that Kennedy would go to the inauguration as president without a hat. He was the first one who was mashpul the Malchus of America. America doesn't have a Malchus, it's a president, not a king, but still. By the time you got to, Jimmy Carter was the first one to wear jeans. By the time you get to Obama, he's already wearing swimming trunks. And we're just happy with Trump and Biden. I mean, this has nothing to do with politics. That they should be wearing something. Just whatever it is we don't know. It doesn't make any difference. The cover of Malchus has disappeared. Going back over here to the idea of merchak, there was always a spectrum. So when I was growing up, there were guys in my class who wanted to choose feminine employment. Whatever it is, when I say feminine, I'm talking about cliches. I want to be a nurse. Okay, one of my Talmudim is a nurse. This is what he likes to do. And there were people that they did sort of think feminine thing, and then but they knew they were men. They just enjoyed. They were more like feminine. They would be very happy. They were happy to work in a kitchen and play with children. Whatever is the feminine cliches. They're all cliches. And there were, and then there were the manly men, right? The alpha men. Okay, zaznu, holchim achshav. They have like the. This is like the one of the whatever it is, the football player. I have pectoral muscles. The whole thing, okay? So that is X-Men, okay? And in the women, you always had the other way around. You always had the girly girls, right? The ones that just want to play with dolls. Again, I apologize, I'm using cliches. And the ones that secretly want to drive a truck, whatever it is. They want to play with the boys' toys. You can go into kindergarten and you can already see this trend. So it's not like it's part of who we are, and that's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with it whatsoever. I'll show you, if I get a chance, I'm going to try and focus so fast. I'll show you the makor for this in Kabbalah, in the deepest form. But the idea is, within male and female, there was always a spectrum, and this is not a problem. It doesn't have to be a specific kind of a way. But the spectrum that I'm talking about, which is the spectrum of male, which is called, I'll just jump to the Kabbalah part, right? In Avram and Sarah, right? So you have that Sarah was called Gvura de Chesed, right? Sarah had a certain masculine dimension to her, and Yitzchak was all the way. Yitzchak came from the Sitra of Nukva on the feminine side, what that means. And until he was 40, he was so feminine that I don't know what this means. He wasn't capable of having children. And then at the Akedah, he switched and became sufficiently masculine that he was able to have kids. I don't know what this means. These are all Kabbalistic ideas. But it gives that sense that already the Avos and the Imahos, you see that they already had these different traits inside of them. The Avos and the Imahos, by definition, were not clones, because each one had to contribute differently to build Klal Yisrael. Comprende, senor? Everyone's with me? Okay, perfect. Now, so coming back over here, we have over here that the merchaka te'eva, the word merchaka means you're fallen off the spectrum. Because Baruch Hu wants you to be on the spectrum. Te'eva means the English say it's abomination. But the targum, the idea of abomination is, no, you have to fit in with what is considered a way that can bring you to your tachlis, that can bring you to your instrument. Here you've fallen off. You're no longer in there. You crossed that thing. You're no longer part of the spectrum. So the word kite'eva is expressed when a man wears a levush, a simla, and a woman wears a kliya for gever. This is very, very interesting because Rashi, the Rashi on the Chumash, it's all based on the Gemara, which you don't have time to do. Gemara in Nazir Nuntes Amud Aleph. That's the main sugya of Leisul Mash. What I'm doing now is the secondary sugya. I want to show you something very beautiful. Rashi says, Kli Gever, Shetehei Daimele Ish, Kidei Shetelech Bein Hanashim, She'ein Ze'el L'Shem Niyuf. So Rashi says that Kli Gever, he doesn't tell us what the word Kli is. He's not explaining that to you. But he says, the point is, a woman wants to be like a man. Kidei Shetelech. Telech means, I want to hang out with the boys. I want to hang out with the boys. So, in English, there's a phrase called a tomboy. I don't want to hang out with the boys. So, Rashi is telling us something interesting, that a girl who has a desire to dress in a way where she can be comfortable amongst boys. So, ultimately, it's because of niyuf. Ultimately, niyuf means that you're gonna behave inappropriately with them. It's gonna always end up merchaka. It's gonna be a to'eva. It's not gonna come out good. So that's why it means the woman has to stay away from dressing like a man. Now the Mefarshim go into the word kli. Rashi doesn't. I just want to give you the different shitas over here. The Targum says, let me just have the actual quote. Where's it? 1 second. Un momento. The Targum says, here we go. The tikun zain gaver. Zain means ammunition. So a woman's not allowed to wear men's a gun, a rifle, anything to do with ammunition, anything to do with war. War is a manly pursuit. Women don't go out to war. A man does. A man, he wants to show that he's a man. He goes around with his sword, right? There's a discussion actually in the 6th parak of Shabbos whether that's considered a tachshir or not. Because there's going to be no wars. But the bottom line is that a woman that wears the sword or today carries a gun, that is, she's over the silvash. What about if she lives in the Shamron? So that already, there's truvas. For Moshe Feinstein already wrote a truva about it. And there's heter, right? You have to know what the heter, the heter work, but that's not for today. Next one is the Targum Yenison. Targum Yenison in Ezekiel, this is controversial, says that Kli Gever is tzitzis and tefillin. Okay, so, a woman wears tzitzis and tefillin, she's over silver. This is controversial, and I'm going to give an answer to this because of the Gemara in Eruvin tells us about Michal, Bas David Melech. I have a granddaughter, Michal, so don't mess with that Michal. You don't mess with Michal as a Tedekis. She wore tefillin. By the way, this is a government health warning. This is a public service announcement. Rashi's daughters did not wear a tefillin. My chavrusa, David Kamenetsky, has, he's very into historical accuracy, and it drives him nuts when people say that. But you can't get away that Michal, the Gemara says that. And the discussion about how the Chachamim reacted. But the point is that Michal herself was not a nobody. She remained something. She remained chashuv. She wore tefillin. So what's she going to do with the Targum Yenison? Let's move on. The Baal Purim says Kli Gever Shel Isha means gematria bli Torah. Works out exactly. Remes shel yilmad adam lebitei Torah. Okay, so it's not going to make me many fans, but the Baal Purim says that a woman wearing man's clothing is when she studies Talmud. Okay, and that's how the Gemara paskins, that it's called tiflus and whatever it is. And if you want to know there are exceptions to the rule, there absolutely are. And what are the rules of the exceptions is not for today. But the bottom line, the default is that it's called a Kli Gever. So let's go back to our discussion over here. So that is the Kli of a Gever. It comes out already. We're not talking just about clothing. We're talking about the accessories. Okay, the accessories over here. When it comes to the yilbash gever simlas isha, so there Rashi says two things. The first is the pashut pshat is clothing. Leishev bein hanashim. You shouldn't sit with a woman. Since I notice over here, he doesn't say holech v'leishev. It means to actually hang out. I know girls like to chill, much more than guys. And they're like, they can sit there. I know, I work in seminaries. So they tell Rabbi was up in the apartment till 4 a.m. with schmoozing. So he wants to be amongst those girls schmoozing when they're doing their girl thing. They're schmoozing over here. It's not going to end up good. It's not going to end up good. That's leiship and anoshim, dressed like them with the similar beged al yom. Dava acher, shlo yashir sa'ar ha'erva v'sa'ar shel beis hashechi. You shouldn't remove your underarm hair and the hair that's connected to reproduction. So here Rashi introduces us that the levush of a woman is not just her external clothing, her simla, but includes in it what I'm going to call now being effeminate. So there's some things that are intrinsically feminine behavior. So this would include, for example, dyeing hair. Right? This is an example of the Gemara over here. It's a big deal. I got like white, I can't dye it black, and all these things over here. But here specifically, there's a discussion in the Gemara where this is the shaving your armpits, for example, that we can talk about publicly, whether it's Doraisa or Divrei Seifrim, but it doesn't make any difference, even though it doesn't bring you to Znus per se, because no one knows what's going on that's hidden. But one thing we do know is that it feminizes you. In other words, in your own mindset, you've become what's called effeminate. And that is a ta'eva, meaning that's taking you out of the spectrum. That's what the Gemara is saying over here. So, kitayva Hashem alekecha kol eisa'ela means that all these activities, a man is two things. One is the external, one is an internal one. This takes you outside the spectrum of regular normative behavior. That creates what's called a ta'eva in Hashem. Now, I just want to summarize over here, because it comes out that Rashi's over here is saying it's two separate levels. I just want to make sure we have it over here. The first is the simple pshat that we're talking about clothing. And the second is that he's adding that something that takes down barriers of normative behavior. So all of these things is completely usher. And I thought of my own nafkamina. This is Germany over here. So I thought about this today. I don't know if you know this, but Julius Streicher, okay, Yamach Shema, one of the 10 people that was in the Nuremberg trials. So was he the propaganda? He was the minister of something propaganda. One of the terrible things that he did over here. So he was famous for his underwear he used to wear women's underwear. So no one sees it. Was the matimla. It's perfect for him because he is the essential to Eva. That's the essential to Eva, that he keeps it hidden inside of himself to dress in an effeminate way to push himself out of the spectrum. Okay, now I'm going to learn the Gemara, but I just want to summarize. I have two questions. One is Michal. I want to go back to Michal. I'm going to have to talk very fast over there. And the second, I also want to talk about Yosef. Because Yosef, in the beginning of Parshas Vayeshev, it says, V'hu nar. Rashi says, okay, the salsa sayers, and this always freaks me out, it was metakin einov. Now, I don't know what he did. Remember, this is before David Beckham. This is before it became like, oh, this is so
Metro.
Cool, like, what?
Metro.
Yeah, before you become Metro, exactly. So he used to fix his eye. Would you need to put an eyelash thing, stuff like that, working his stuff? Well, what women do in front of their thing, stuff like that with their eyes. Yosef Hatzadik. What about Lisilbash? Well, Rashi says that's effeminate behavior. So, watch this over here. Let's just go straight to the Gemara. And a little bit, I'm just going to summarize over here. If you have a look on Nun Amid Beis, in the Gemara over here, the Gemara exactly halfway down, it says, Meimar, Umazutra, V'Rav Ashi, Havi Yasvi. They were seen together, 3 rabbis, just before the halfway mark. So 3 great rabbis are seen together. Havi Aisi Lekamayu Barda. They bought Barda. What is Barda? So the Gemara explains above, Barda is what today you'd buy in your local supermarket to make you smell good. There's 1/3 aloe, 1/3 jasmine, and what was the third? The third Rashi said third, and the third is jasmine, aloe, and something else that's very good. I can't remember. Hold on. It's the Gemara straight above. Amarav Yesi tilta ala tilta asa. Oh, crushed hadassim, right? So all these things created, I guess, a lotion. Today would probably be sold as a spray, and you put it on yourself, and it's ganz geschmack. But the problem was this was Shabbos, and this is Masechah Shabbos over here. So they brought it along, and Mazurcha, so Ameima, Marashi, Mashvi, they put it on. Part of the problem is that they were concerned that maybe it'll cause hair to fall out, which is an issa of geizes. Well, there's a lot of problems over here from Shabbos viewpoint. Mazutra loy masha, Rav Zutra refused to put it on. Amalei the saval elamar, the hadam Rav Sheshes barda shari. You can use barda on Shabbos. Amalei Rav Mordechai barmenei demar. Forget about Mazutra. Da fili b'chol namilo. You can't put on cologne even during the week. Now this is the original cologne. Spirale, Kahaditania, Wilana Brisa, Megada Adam Gildi Tsea Vigildi Maka, shall be served Tsaro. If a person has accumulated sweat, the Ron explains to the point that it can cause you an infection. It's like a person has a buildup of dirt on their thing that can cause an infection. In Bishvili Yapais, if you want to remove it because you want to look good, it doesn't look good on you. Also, it's forbidden. So, if it is for health purposes, you can remove it. To make yourself pretty, you can't do it. You can't do something to your body to make yourself look yafeh, beautiful. So now we have a brisa that says a man cannot do anything to his body to make himself look beautiful. This is not good. So I just wanted to, before I get to the other side over here, I just wanted to quote to you something. Oh my gosh, my notes are so not put together. Here we go. 1 second. Excellent. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I just wanted to make a point of it. And I'm running out of time. I was just going to say, the bottom line is, the Rambam brings down these halachas. And anybody want to guess which section? Where would the Rambam talk about it's forbidden to wear women's clothing? A woman can't wear man's clothing. What do you think it would come up? What? Yeah, that's a good answer. Okay, I hear that. It comes in the Avodah Zarah. The end of Avodah Zarah, it talks about chukas hagoyim. I understand the Rambam has a whole shita that Avodah Zarah is essentially connected to the spectrum, because he mentions that part of the Avodah Zarah they used to have, Mara Nevuchim, he says that they used to put on women's clothing when they used to serve Avodah Zarah. Like, what's going on? You talk about in Berlin, you can kind of see it. I don't know, they just see it as well, especially over here. It's like the koil is in the hipster capital of the world. This is all thing, whatever it is. But the whole essentially, this is what they did. So, and the Shulchan Aruch is also by Yeridea after the laws of you can't behave like the nations of the world. Now, I understand that Avodah Zarah, the Rambam sees it as also not the same spectrum we're talking about, but the same idea. Is that you're breaking out of normative behavior because Baruch Hu wants to serve Elohim, not Elohim Acherim. When you do that, that is in the same capital, the same thing, Chukas HaGoyim, in the same general family of Ta'eva. How exactly the Rambam touches it up, I'm not exactly sure. But I want to go and show you now the answer that you give. Let's go straight to the answer. Remember, we have a brisa that says you can only put on cologne for health reasons. But you cannot do it you can only remove your scabs for health reasons. But you cannot do it to make yourself pretty. Now watch this. The other one holds another brisa that says, Roichetz Adam Panov Yada Baraglav B'chol Yain Bishvil Kainai Mishun Shenema Kol Poel Hashem L'Manehu. It's a mitzvah to wear beautiful, to wash your face, and therefore to remove your scabs and to remove everything and to remove the buildup of dirt and to take a shower, as they say here in yeshiva. It's a mitzvah to take a shower, especially if it's a 3-day Yom Tov. Take a cold shower, because Kipayel Hashem L'Maneu. The actions of man have to create what's called L'Maneu, an honor to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's a crazy, crazy Rashi over here. But now I want to give over my main point. And my main point is as follows. You have over here two prices. One brisa says, I'm not allowed to make myself beautiful. The other one says, it's a mitzvah to make yourself beautiful. Kipar Hashem L'Manei, you have to make yourself beautiful in front of man. So what's you say to the machlokes? You guys want to suggest? What is the nakuda over here?
Why do you do it?
Well, motivation. So why is there machlokes? Why can't they just agree? Let's find out if his motive is to aver or not. Why can't you just simplify it?
You see the way to know if it's because of a good reason, you see the result that it does. So So if it brings someone to Eva, so he knows.
So again, I'm asking you a question. So then why are they disagreeing? Why? I just wanted to say the following today. I have a couple of possibilities, but the one I want to work with is the following thing. The first opinion said there are certain actions that are always going to be intrinsically effeminate. There's nothing you can do about it. Shaving your armpits doesn't matter what you do. The first opinion says is that making yourself pretty, men don't do that. It doesn't make any sense, okay? If you want to be hygienic, that's fine. But you want to make yourself yafeh, yoifi is for nashim. Yoifi is that women do it for themselves. That's the first opinion. There is other possibilities of how to learn this. The second opinion says is not just, there's such a thing as intrinsic feminine action. It always boils down to motive. So what overrides? The override is always when you're doing l'shem shamayim. So when there's a higher reason for doing something, so then we don't care anymore if it has a feminine dimension. So again, the second opinion, which is of course what makes it into halacha, which I'm going to show you in a moment. The second opinion says there are some things for us representing the male gender that are considered feminine activities and feminine ways of presenting yourself that are forbidden for us unless you can show that you have a higher motive that's called an override. Let me say very briefly some examples of an override. What?
King has the haircut every day.
Okay, that's a perfect example. Okay, with a king, that's already, with the king Malchus is for sure an override. But I wanted to say over here, okay, number one, the Bach brings down from the Marie Mintz, this is a German rabbi from 700 years ago. He says that you're allowed to wear women's clothing. Who can finish my sentence? Women's clothing on Purim. Okay, this is the earliest reference, as far as I know, for a Purim costume. The Bach brings down from the Sefer Yereim, another Rishon, that also the Yesh Levatel Min HaGazeh. It's a terrible thing. The Ramah Paskins like who? In Orach Chaim, Tafrei Tzadi Vav Ches, he says, I know this because my first year of marriage I did this without knowing why, that it was permitted. First year of marriage I dressed up as a kala, and my wife dressed up as a chassan. And the Ramah says it's mutter, as Simchas Purim. One of the Purim is to change your malbush. The Mishbur quotes the Shla, the Knesset Gdola, the harchik mizeh. I think it's for two reasons. Not just the harchik is not just because of what we're saying about, because it's very feminine. You know, can't just think of women's clothing, but it's I just think Kedushas Purim. Even if it's one article of clothing, even on Purim. That's the Mishnah Berurah, but the Ramah is definitely Mekel. I'm going to skip a few. Another one, mirrors, right? I don't know if you know this, but the Chazon Ish. If anyone, can anyone stay a few more minutes, just so I can. Mm-hmm. If you can stay a few minutes, if you have to leave, I appreciate it.
Yes.
Okay, I apologize.
Thank you so much.
Okay, I mamish have just a few minutes left. Mm-hmm. But a mirror is a perfect example of something that is intrinsically effeminate. Yerideh kufnun vavum halachi base. It's also elaim kain chayshish me'enav. Oy misapa. If you're giving yourself a haircut, so then it's permitted. The Ramah says, "Makim shederech hanashim lireis gam kimara mitzvah." So the Ramah opens up a whole thing. Minhag hamakom is an override. So that becomes something that is not permitted. The Chazon Ish once saw a mirror, and he said Shalom Aleichem to his brother. He'd never seen himself in a mirror. He said Shalom Aleichem to his brother. So this thing about nafki mina is a massive machlokes between the way we say it in Israel, between Rav Yosef and Rav Dayan Weiss, about whether women can wear trousers. Everyone knows that the problem of trousers for sure is a problem of tznius. But is it also begedish? What would you say? I just walked out of here. Okay, every woman's wearing trousers. Right. So Rav Yosef, this is the way I understand it. He says, in the world, the whole world to see, women wear pants. He says, can't say it's begedish. It's begedish. And Dayan Weiss would say, who cares? Since when does the gas? Since when does the street decide?
For example, Scottish people or so, they wear kilts. It's also begedish then.
That's for sure begedish.
So then the flip is the same.
Exactly. In Fiji, so there for sure. Right. If you're a Hamish Klansman, right. If you're like a nice firm guy from some Scottish guy drinking whiskey, right. And you're wearing your tribe's kilt, it's a hitter gadol. It's a perfect example. Now another example of Shem Zal Aruch talks about plastic surgery. So once again, to make yourself prettier is asur. For sure it is. If you have a disfigurement, then he says it's permitted. And then it's a goal that goes through. There's other problems of disfiguring yourself because of chabal, which we're not going into. Perfume. This is what I wanted to get to. Mm-hmm. What do you say? Can you guys put Friday night? You guys shave. Can you put on cologne? Based on everything we've said.
Mitzvah.
Covered Shabbos. Right? It's covered Shabbos. But what about if you wear, you put on your mom's perfume? Can you do that? What I didn't even know, like they have these CK gender neutral ones. I would not put it on.
Suffix.
Yeah, it's a suffix. I don't know what it is, but okay, for sure. But if it's something that is marketed for men,
right, and
it's minhag hamakom, in other words, you are, American or German or in Israel, you're Sephardi, you're at Dubai, whatever. It's different. It's the minhag. They do that, so that's it. You walk sometimes out of some of the yeshivas and you feel like you're in the cosmetic section in Kmart, like it's terrible. How much? But that's it. So then it'll be 100% okay. Right. Now I want to get to my final points over here. I want you, if you can, to look at this most beautiful Rashi. What does Rashi say about Bishvul Kainai? You see, it's Rashi over here, and this we end. L'chvoid Kainai, Dichsev. What pasuk does Rashi bring? Ki v'tzelem alekim asa. Make yourself beautiful because you would create an image of Hashem. This is the override. So, who are we doing this for? When you want to make yourself beautiful, according to this opinion, is really for yourself, right? Your person has to remember they're at Tzalem Alekim. So every morning there's a mitzvah, and it's brought down in the Rambam, Shulchan Aruch, that when you wash your hands, you should also wash your face. People don't know that. But you should take a splash of water on your face. It's a mitzvah. Why? To remind yourself that you have at Tzalem Alekim. It's nishpasha. Look at the second thing he says. I'm sure there's layers of depth over there, but this is crazy. V'oid daharoya briyos nas. If you see beautiful people, aime you make a bracha. Bar shekachol be'alama. Thank you, Hashem, for making beautiful people. I remember I taught this in 8th grade in Memphis, Tennessee. The whole class ran out and went to the front desk with the secretary. There was a non-Jewish secretary over there that all the 8th grade boys had a crush on. It was kind of embarrassing. They all said the bracha was Shema Malchus, with God's name. It was insane. And then I forgot, I was traumatized. Mishmur says we don't have that minhag anymore to say this bracha, but to say a bracha by a person who has we'd say you call him a model or like a supermodel. You see a supermodel, you should make a bracha. You look for 10 seconds, and then put your head down.
Also for very ugly people.
Well,
also for
not this bracha. That's Mashana Bris. It's a different bracha.
Right,
cologne is specifically for people that of Yofi. But I want to say, it's very hard to know what Rashi says because Rashi's not brought down the halacha. This Rashi doesn't make you pass here. But Rashi, obviously, I don't believe. I want to ask you a question. Rashi, we're talking about these Amoraim over here. These Amoraim were perfect male specimens. We know that there were Tanoim that were ugly. The Gemaras bring down. So the point is that it's not so much that you look in the mirror and say, I want to walk down over here in the Vidal Vegasstrasse, whatever it's called over here, and I want people to look at me and say, Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, shekachalei v'olam. I see such a handsome young man from the Berlinerseminar, right? It's not what it means. Because it's ridiculous. What happens if you're an elderly person? The point is as follows. I think it's a hemshech of what he said in the first thing. The person has a Tzalem Alekim. First thing is that you have to recognize. Second is that you have to do everything you can to express your Tzalem Alekim to the world to the world around you. And this brings me back to Yosef. Okay, this is come full circle over here. Who was Yosef HaTzadik? Yosef HaTzadik was, in Kabbalah, it's called Midas HaYisod. What does that mean? Rabbeinu Bachya says, if you go up to Shemayim, you see the Kisei HaKavod, you'll see a lion, you'll see what? No, that was originally, that's okay. You see a lion, you see an eagle, you see Yaakov Avinu's face, an Adam, and then comes the shore, switch to a kruv in the times of Yechezkel. Who did the kruv look like? The shore was switched to a little child. Who was that child's face? Rabbeinu Bachya says, Yosef HaTzadik. V'hu nar, he says on the ones, v'hu nar. The word nar means that he was the nar on the Merkava. It's pretty good. Okay, now for Yosef to do that, he had to do a trick. He wanted his external face to be perfect, to harmonize with that perfect face that you're supposed to have in the higher worlds. Everything he did was kichol v'shamayim kavaretz, to make a harmony between the high and the lower worlds. My Rebbe Ramesh Shapiro once gave a shir, which I'm not going to explain now, that the brothers looked at Yosef and says, he looks like Yavon, he looks like the Greeks. All he cares about is external beauty. He didn't see that he was such a high level, this Ben Kunin, that he got all the Kabbalah from his father, that his external beauty was to match the higher beauty. So, Einayim, which is another thing I'd love to talk about, the power of eyes, nothing more than the eyes and the hair has an external and an internal meaning. And he wanted to perfect his external eyes to match with his internal eyes, and that's what Yosef was doing. One thing about Michal, and I can finally close. Michal's, this is the Kaf HaChaim, right? The Kaf HaChaim brings this down in Or Chaim Lamed Ches Halacha Tes, according to Sefer Kol Yaf Lev, I don't know, that Michal was the opposite of Yitzchak. She was Misitra de Duchra. She was naturally masculine. How do we know she never had children? And therefore, for her, it was shaykh tefillin. The wall of tefillin was shaykh to her. So there is a thing. She was on the spectrum because he was Misitra. She had that masculine dimension to her that she understood of Kabbalah, and that's why she couldn't have kids. So I just want to, first of all, I want to thank you for everyone listening to me. It's a big chus to teach Torah on a high level here. And secondly, that this is something today, when you walk around, it's very, 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 very disheartening. You see men are women are men, and all the way to the government. This is the way it should be. Everyone says this is lechatchila, right? This means Mashiach is breathing down our neck. You hit this level where we've lost every single sense of identity. A man is no longer a man, a woman is no longer a woman, and we've lost the most basic spectrum of what it means to express yourself. So it's a bracha. That means the Mashiach is coming. You should be zeicha to see him. We should always see him with our own eyes from the hair of Yameinu. Thank you so much for listening.